One person you won't see at the Beijing Olympic, the Japanese Prime Minister. He announced today that he has no plans to personally attend the Games. A Chinese state media chief is retiring after years of defending Beijing's policies. A college instructor lost her job in China over comments about the Nanking, now known as Nanking Massacre. Her firing comes amid the 84th anniversary of the incident. Recently leaked documents suggest that Chinese telecom giant Huawei has closer ties to the Chinese Communist Party than it's let on. And public outcry over tennis star Peng Shuai has kicked China's censorship machine into overtime. But Chinese netizens are getting creative in their attempts to outsmart it. We examine the Communist Party's toolbox for blocking online discussion it deems sensitive. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Japan's leader says he has no plans to attend the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida told Parliament on Thursday that, quote, "At the moment, I am not planning to attend the Beijing Games myself." But he added that he will decide later whether to send government representatives there. The comment from the U.S. ally came after several countries, including the U.S., the U.K., Australia, and Canada, announced diplomatic boycotts of the Beijing Olympics. That's to protest the communist regime's human rights abuses, including keeping Uyghurs in Xinjiang in concentration camps. But another U.S. ally in the region, South Korea, says it won't join the diplomatic boycott. That's because they need China's help to counter North Korea's nuclear ambitions. A Chinese media chief is retiring. The head of state-backed newspaper Global Times announced on Thursday he would step back from his job. Hu Xijing, known for embracing China's aggressive wolf warrior style in his reporting on foreign affairs, wrote that he would continue to do his best for the Communist Party's news and public opinion work. Global Times is a major media mouthpiece for the Chinese Communist Party. Its outreach also targets those outside China, and Hu is one of the loudest voices in the chorus of China's nationalist movement. His work in defending the CCP's policies has earned him the party's trust. Because of that, he was widely seen as a kind of unofficial spokesman for Beijing. Based on his post, diplomats and experts inside and outside China speculate on what Chinese leaders may really be thinking. Despite praise from the regime, not all Chinese netizens see him in such a bright light. Social media users have given him the nickname Frisbee Fetcher. Comparing him to a dog, they say he fetches each and every frisbee his owner throws at him, meaning he takes every word the party throws at him and finds a way to defend it. So let's examine how he did it. Hu was one of the first to respond when other countries learned of and denounced the Xinjiang region's internment camps. He argued the facilities served as re-education camps that sought to help Uyghurs. In another case, he described Australia as gum stuck to China's shoe last year. This after Australia called for an investigation into the origins of the pandemic. More recently, he jumped into disputes about Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai, amid global concerns for her safety after she accused a former top official of sexual assault, who released videos of her in a Beijing restaurant with friends. The clips were shared to reinforce China's statements, saying she was unharmed. Peng made the accusation against the official last month through a social media account. Since then, she's vanished from public view. Many international tennis stars and organizations have expressed fears over her well-being. Some have even taken action against China, like the Women's Tennis Association's decision to pull tournaments out of the country. Hu took that opportunity to denounce the WTA, accusing it of what he called coercing Peng Shuai into supporting the West's attack on the Chinese system. He also claimed the organization deprived Peng Shuai of her freedom of expression. Hu has even gone so far as to defend corruption from within the Communist Party. He said that at the moment, China isn't able to weed out corruption. So for now, the key point is to keep the scale of that corruption to a manageable level, something he says the Chinese people can accept. Two senior members from another state-backed media, People's Daily, will step up to replace Hu. It remains to be seen if the Global Times will retain Hu's wolf warrior style. Amid the 84th anniversary of the Nanjing Massacre during the Second Sino-Japanese War, China has ramped up anti-Japanese sentiment in the country. On Thursday, a Chinese college instructor was fired over what she said about the incident earlier this week. Her speech wasn't hateful, but that seemed to be the issue.
We should reflect on how the war started from a positive, historical perspective, rather than hating forever. That is the most important thing.
The comments came after China held nationwide commemoration for the victims of the Nanking Massacre.
I saw the large-scale propaganda campaign on the Nanking Massacre yesterday, and I realized that maybe this is due to Japan's boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics.
Fierce criticism quickly flooded Chinese social media, and they escalated into something more severe soon after. According to Chinese media reports, Shanghai Aurora College has launched an investigation into the incident on Wednesday and fired the instructor. They say her remarks have caused a major teaching incident and serious adverse social impact. The college also vowed to further maintain political discipline for all classes. CCP mouthpiece People's Daily also attacked the instructor online, saying she deserves to be neither a teacher nor a Chinese. The Nanking Massacre began on December 13, 1937. An international post-war tribunal estimated that at least 200,000 civilians were killed by Japanese troops, but the actual number remains unknown. In recent years, China has been waging a propaganda campaign against Japan. Chinese citizens are fed anti-Japanese narratives through TV dramas and media reports. The Nanjing Massacre is one of the top features. Despite Beijing's efforts to perpetuate memories of Japan's atrocity, there are no calls for recognizing the atrocities of its own Great Leap Forward or the Cultural Revolution, though the death toll in both events dwarfed that of Nanjing. Troubling news from Hong Kong. Footage captured during China's Nanking Massacre was reportedly played for elementary school students as part of what's called their patriotic education. The video shows the Japanese military killing Chinese civilians, and watching the clips scared some of the children to tears. Here's more.
Hong Kong officials are distancing themselves from a recent elementary school incident, a World War II massacre video screening. The graphic video left some children in tears. But officials are keeping the situation at arm's length, saying schools are not required to screen such footage and that teachers should judge for themselves. The video depicts Japanese soldiers killing thousands of civilians in the Chinese city of Nanjing. That's the former Chinese capital, located about 200 miles west of Shanghai. Monday marked the 80th anniversary of the Nanjing Massacre. But the decision to expose children to such brutal and violent content has prompted complaints from concerned parents.
There are some children who found the video scary. Teachers had to explain to them that it happened in history.
According to local media, the school in question said that it would carefully consider the children's emotions in the future and adjust its teaching materials accordingly. On Tuesday, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam confirmed that the video had been included in a teaching materials checklist.
But I believe Education Bureau has not mandated that all teaching on this Nanjing Massacre has to show that video. So it is a matter of professional judgment by the teachers.
The massacre lasted from December 1937 to January 1938. During that time, Japanese soldiers engaged in mass killings of hundreds of thousands of Chinese people in Nanjing. The massacre is widely included in the Chinese Communist Party's so-called patriotic education campaign. The Japanese atrocities were extensively covered in teaching mainland Chinese school children. Under that curriculum, the CCP is often portrayed as having played a core role in resisting the Japanese. At the same time, the killings and other abuses that have happened during CCP-led political campaigns were largely ignored in textbooks, even though experts estimate that altogether the campaigns led to the deaths of 70 to 80 million Chinese people. In recent years, Hong Kong authorities have started including Chinese history as a compulsory subject for students. They've also indicated that topics like national security will get coverage, following the national security law Beijing imposed on the city last year. What's more, Lam has called for the strengthening of so-called patriotic education in schools amid Beijing's tightening grip on the city.
Newly revealed information suggests that Chinese telecom giant Huawei is working closer with Beijing than it admits. The Washington Post reviewed more than 100 Huawei slideshows the company has since deleted. Many of those slides are marked confidential. The slides show Huawei pitching how its technologies can help authorities surveil individuals. That includes identifying people by voice, monitoring political targets, and helping retailers track shoppers using facial recognition. Some of the surveillance capabilities showcased apply specifically to police or state agencies. The slide suggests that Huawei is working with the CCP in spying operations. One of the slides shows Huawei touting that its facial recognition technology has helped Xinjiang authorities capture people. The slide also boasts that its facial recognition system covers all transportation hubs in the capital of Xinjiang, and it has data on more than 50 million people with accurate alerts to Chinese police. The Washington Post contacted Huawei for comment about the slides. The telecom company said that it has no knowledge of the projects. Chinese social media platform Weibo, the same platform that censored Peng Shuai's sexual assault allegations, is being fined for not censoring enough. China's internet regulator fined Weibo close to $500,000 on Tuesday. The regulator says Weibo is repeatedly publishing illegal information. They also say the platform violated a cybersecurity law that protects minors without giving further details. In its response to the fine, Weibo said it sincerely accepts criticism from the regulator and that they established a work group. The fine adds to a long list of penalties this year. Weibo has been slapped with a total of 44 fines within the past 11 months. They have cost the company over $2 million. China's internet regulator has been imposing a series of penalties on tech companies this year, including on major companies like Alibaba and Tencent. A rare moment in the academic world. A highly regarded scientific journal has retracted a paper that has connections to human rights abuses in China. The study assesses different genetic variations among ethnic groups, including the Uyghurs and the Tibetans. The paper used DNA samples from nearly 38,000 men in China. The journal, called Human Genetics, retracted the paper over doubts about whether the Uyghurs and the Tibetans gave informed consent to their DNA samples being collected. Reports say that at least 9 of the paper's 30 co-authors have ties to Chinese police departments or police academies, and several others have ties to Chinese universities. Uyghurs have previously told the New York Times that the Chinese regime had called on them en masse to give blood samples, and they had no choice but to comply. Springer Nature publishes Human Genetics. Earlier this year, the journal retracted another paper for similar reasons. Taiwan's defense ministry is releasing its latest threat assessment. The report says a full-scale Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be extremely difficult for Beijing to pull off. Let's look at why that's the case.
In a report to lawmakers, Taiwan's defense ministry said there are 3 major weaknesses in the Chinese army's current strategy for a potential attack on Taiwan. First, the Communist Party's army does not have enough landing vehicles to send all of its troops to Taiwan at once. Instead, they'd have to be divided into multiple echelons, leaving the scattered forces at a disadvantage. Secondly, the Chinese force would first have to seize Taiwan's ports and airports to drop off its troops, but the Taiwanese army staunchly defend its ports and airstrips. A quick Chinese takeover would prove no easy feat. Thirdly, the Chinese military may face supply challenges. In order to restock Chinese troops, weapons, ammunition, food, and medicine would all have to be transported to the island over the Taiwan Strait. Experts say an all-out invasion of Taiwan would be the biggest and most complex amphibious landing ever attempted.
If the Chinese Communist Party attacks Taiwan by force, Taiwan has already thought through all the possible ways. Defensive operations on large islands are advantageous to the defender. Modern technology provides more cheaper and more effective options for the anti-landing side.
The report also notes the proximity of U.S. and Japanese bases to Taiwan, pointing out that the Chinese Communist military would have to retain forces to defend against intervention from the U.S. and Japan. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida pledged in November to consider all options to create a stronger self-defense force, that's to protect the country amid growing threats. And for the security situation around Japan, Kishida warned the reality is more severe than ever. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is also hinting at Japan's possible military role in a conflict over Taiwan.
There is no question that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would impose a significant risk to the land of Japan both geographically and spatially. A Taiwan emergency is a Japanese emergency, and therefore an emergency for the U.S.-Japan alliance. People in Beijing, especially President Xi Jinping, should never have a misunderstanding in recognizing this. I think that Japan, Taiwan, and all the democratic countries need to keep urging President Xi Jinping and the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party not to step onto a wrong path. Military misadventure would lead to economic suicide.
Overall, a full-on invasion would present huge risks for Beijing, though experts say the regime does have other means to bring Taiwan to its knees.
What appears to be a textbook example of censorship is gaining traction in China. Next, we look into how the Chinese Communist Party is dealing with information flow amid global concerns for tennis star Peng Shuai. Here are the details.
The full power of China's censorship network was recently put on full display. It kicked into gear in a mere 20 minutes, mobilizing after Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai posted a damning accusation on social media. Just weeks ago, the pro athlete accused former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli of sexually assaulting her. She shared her account of the incident on her Weibo account, a popular Chinese platform similar to Twitter. Beijing's far-reaching censorship system works in many ways, and it's growing even more sophisticated. Let's examine what we know about the Chinese regime's propaganda toolbox and see how it works. When a piece of content is deemed critical of Beijing or otherwise sensitive, first all traces of it are removed at the source, showcased by the swift removal of Peng Shuai's Weibo post. Next, Chinese internet censors target anything that may refer to the content, in this case, Peng's claims. For a time, they even limited access to topics as broad as the search term tennis. As a result, Chinese internet users have come up with a variety of ways to outsmart the censors and discuss topics otherwise blocked. Some posts use a mixture of English words and Chinese pinyin. That's when Chinese words are phonetically spelled out with the English alphabet. Others use symbols to substitute some letters or words. Still others even use the name of a different person to discuss a sensitive topic, but with the same last name as the subject. In this case, mentioning a person whose family name is Peng to refer to Peng Shuai. More examples describe tennis rather than using the word itself, such as playing a game of ping pong without a table. Its use draws on the similarity between the game often known as table tennis with actual tennis. Despite the creative efforts, these posts were removed as well. According to an internet freedom expert from Berkeley, Beijing already banned several hundred keywords tied to Peng. Xiao says this level of censorship is reserved for extremely touchy subjects for the Communist Party, like the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. But while Chinese internet censors work to maintain complete control over discussion inside China, Beijing often remains silent to the outside world. That is, until it's forced to comment. Peng Shuai's case has been gaining stream since her original post. A growing number of famous athletes, organizations, and governments have joined in with international outcry, especially after she disappeared from the public eye for days following the post. And the issue is showing no signs of slowing down, unlike what Beijing likely expected, forcing it to address the topic. China's state-backed English-language broadcaster China Global Television Network, or CGTN, posted a controversial screenshot. It appears to be an email from Peng in which she calls the sexual assault accusation false and requests that the media respect her privacy. But a handful of pixels from the image sparked alarm. Visible on the screenshot is a cursor marking where new text will appear on a page once it's typed, but no cursor should be present on an email that's already been sent, since the text can't be edited. The discrepancy has called the email's author into question, with some wondering whether Peng actually wrote it and when exactly the screenshot was captured. Other images have also played a role in the debate. CGTN also posted photos of Peng herself, claiming they came from Peng's WeChat Messenger account, while another of the regime's media mouthpieces posted video clips on Twitter, showing the tennis star eating dinner with a group of people after days of radio silence. One of the clips mentioned a tennis competition slated for the next day, November 21st. And the following morning, Chinese media outlets posted images and video of Peng at a youth tennis tournament. What's more, when the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, said officials spoke to Peng twice over video chat and vouched for her well-being, Chinese state media moved quickly to quote the news. But not everyone is convinced that it, plus the photos and videos, prove Peng's safety. The IOC has kept silent about Peng's allegations. Critics say the organization is more concerned with ensuring the upcoming Beijing Winter Games run smoothly, while other groups are taking a more bold approach. The Women's Tennis Association pulled all of its tournaments out of China over concern for Peng. That's despite its millions in business dealings with the Chinese market. Peng did not reach out to the association despite her alleged calls with the IOC, which offered markedly less support. Back online, analysis from the New York Times and nonprofit ProPublica examined a major find on social media. 97 fake Twitter accounts were identified, all promoting Chinese state media's narrative about Peng Shuai. ProPublica is a New York-based nonprofit focusing on investigative journalism. The investigation found that all of the accounts had 0 followers and did not follow any other accounts. There's more. Looking to Beijing's propaganda toolbox, making false countercharges is an old trick used to divert the public's attention. Likewise, in Peng's case, instead of addressing concerns over her whereabouts, Chinese state media accused Western countries of using Peng to undermine China. And last but not least, in its playbook, the Chinese regime often employs a strategy called divide and control. It shows up in statements that promote an us versus them narrative. While Beijing's internet censors have been busy deleting content about Peng, one post was left intact. The statement was shared by the French embassy and urged China to protect its female citizens. But instead of its intended effect, it seems to have been twisted to fuel Beijing nationalism. Netizens flocked to the post, accusing France of overstepping into China's internal affairs. But the debate is still going over whether that reflects the true opinion of Chinese internet users. At one point, based on Chinese social media platform Weibo statistics, the embassy post had been shared 1,600 times. But only a handful of the most recent shares were visible, suggesting many had been removed. As for the posts that showed support for the French embassy, they disappeared within a matter of hours.
Shares of China's biotech firms plunged on Wednesday amid concerns that the Biden administration will put an investment and export ban on more Chinese companies. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
Shares of Chinese healthcare and technology firms tumbled on Wednesday. The decline was led by WuXi Biologics, which crashed near 20%, while Sino Biopharmaceutical dropped 5%. The decline came after a Tuesday report from the Financial Times. It said the U.S. Treasury Department would add 24 Chinese companies to a trade blacklist known as the Entity List. This list might include the largest Chinese commercial drone maker DJI and biotech firms for their involvement in Beijing's mass surveillance of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. China affairs analyst Frank Chin says he thinks Chinese companies listed on Wall Street will likely be unlisted from U.S. capital markets in the next few years.
It will inevitably happen. In reality, it's already started. Many companies are purposely avoiding going public on the American stock market. The Chinese government is forcing them to delist from the American stock exchanges and return to mainland China or go public in Hong Kong.
Take Chinese ride-hailing giant Didi, for example. It said it will start delisting from the New York Stock Exchange and plans to list in Hong Kong instead. That decision made just less than 6 months after it went public.
Honestly, it's not because the companies themselves are opposed to it. It's actually because of the Chinese regime using national security as an excuse to stop American auditors from inspecting their financial statements.
This month, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission finalized rules allowing it to remove foreign firms from U.S. exchanges if they fail to comply with U.S. audits for 3 consecutive years. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.